Is it stock up or stock down in college basketball? Well, I tell you what, we're going to talk about it here on 94 Feet of UNC.
Gordy to Black. The time, 18. Shot, Jordan! Michael Jordan!
Swicker with the defense and the rebound. That's a good effort by Swicker.
Stackout streaking in on Parks. Rebound stock is good, and he gets fouled by Parks. Oh my goodness, what a dunk by Stackout.
Interesting that he brought him back so quickly, but you know what? They're down eight. It's fair to say, but you can't teach that. You can't teach that. You can't teach that high-rising ability. Three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1. Great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you could.
The glass no good. Rebound followed by hand throw. Good! Carolina.
Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key.
Allen, the belt is over. Carolina. The Tar Heels have won the national championship.
And that is it. There is a new team in college basketball. North Carolina takes the title. Hampton, any final. North Carolina is the 2009 national champion. And this year, the confetti is going to fall to North Carolina. They're not going to be denied this time.
What's up, everybody? It is Wednesday, October 23rd. You are tuned in to the 94 Feet of UNC podcast. I am your host, Linzel Graham. Of course, I got a special guest in the building with me today. He decided to stop in, chop it up with me a little bit here at the Zell Dome today. But before we get into him introducing himself and everything, just want to tell everybody thank you and for all of the love and support that you all have given me. Whatever you can do, make sure you like and subscribe. Hit that on my YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any content that I provide for you. Also, follow me on my socials, on Twitter, on Instagram, at 94 Feet of UNC. And we got 94 Feet of UNC podcast merchandise, which is coming soon. So in order to find out about the free giveaways and the contest and things like that, make sure you tap in with me. So my special guest in the building today, this guy's like, he's a legend in my eyes, of course. I got Mr. Aaron Torres in the building with me today. Aaron, how are you, my guy?
If I knew I was a legend in your eyes, we could have done this way sooner. But no, man, it's a pleasure. And, you know, we were talking before and you said some very complimentary things of me. So I appreciate all your kind words. You know, I love college basketball, love college sports. And so anybody who shares that passion is a friend of mine and can't wait to talk some ball because as we were talking about, I can't believe how close we are to the start of the season.
Oh man, it's here. It's here, Aaron. Like, oh man, we've been waiting for so long, and I don't know it's here. We're gonna get into it. But listen, before we get into everything as far as starting everything, let everybody know who you are. I'm sure, I mean, you're not an unfamiliar face, but for those out there that don't know who you are, please let them know who you are.
Yeah, man. You know, I'll try to be brief, but been covering college sports for about 15 years. I actually went to UConn, so maybe the only school in America that has a longer intro video than you just had, because I saw it was every Carolina national championship, and you know, but grew up in Connecticut, went to UConn, graduated, and you know, I am a not quote unquote traditional media guy. Kind of started as a writer. And as the space has evolved, kind of got into the podcast YouTube space. And so, you know, I host the Aaron Torres podcast 3 times a week, all college sports, all the time. Obviously, we're talking a lot of college football, but I think I'm probably best known for college basketball. Also host on Fox Sports Radio. I do the Saturday night recap show. So just this past Saturday, we're on as Georgia's beating Texas. You know, it's mostly college football, but Yankees win and they're going to the World Series. So it's a really fun time. So, you know, I'm blessed to do this for a living. Fox Sports Radio, the Aaron Torres podcast, and been doing this for a long time and love doing what I do. Don't ever take it for granted. And it's just a pleasure to be joining a show like this. Like I said, for somebody who loves college basketball as much as I do.
Hey, that's what's up, man. Listen, that was That was as brief as it could be. Like,
Oh, thank you.
I'm not mad at it at all.
Very rare for me to be brief. That's not one of my
Yeah,
strong suits.
that was it. All of that was needed, Aaron. All of that was needed. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, listen, once again, I appreciate you stopping by for sure. Like I tell everybody, listen, come on in. This is the Zell Dome where everybody just comes in, gets a little comfortable. We're not here for a long time, but we're here for a good time. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So, yeah, man. So, but once again, actually, for sure, appreciate you stopping by us. But let's get into it, man, and let's talk a little bit about it, because I'm curious to know some of your thoughts on some things for this upcoming season. So, of course, my first question is, I gotta ask you your thoughts on what teams you're looking forward to seeing, I guess, this year. Who are you stock up on, and who may you be a little stock down on, I guess, or hesitant on?
No, there's so many, and that's part of what I think is making this season so anticipated for me. Is, before we get to the stock up, stock down, I mean, just think about this offseason, right? Calipari leaves for Arkansas. Mark Pope takes over at Kentucky. All of a sudden, BYU's got a ton of NIL money. I know that they think that they can compete in the Big 12 in the upper level. UConn going, my alma mater, going for a third straight title. So there's so many storylines. As far as like who I'm most intrigued by, listen, I'm not trying to be cliche, but I think it starts with UConn. I was at practice a few weeks ago, was sworn to secrecy as to what I saw, but they have had a charity exhibition, and they're going to have a team again that I think can be in the hunt. Now, I think that, I think it's easy to say, well, they lost a bunch off the team 2 years ago and they bounced back and won it last year, but do think it's a little bit different this year. 4 guys drafted. Donovan Clingan, to me, was the biggest difference maker in college basketball a year ago. And so, they're going to be in the hunt, though. And if you have a team in the hunt, that's all you could ask for, especially after you lost, 4 guys to the NBA draft. So stock up on them. I won't say stock up on Duke, but I am very intrigued by them because, listen, everyone's focused on Cooper Flagg, but I actually think Shire did a good job of putting together a roster around him, older guys, shooters, guys that really complement his game. And I give Shire a little bit of credit is, hey, man, in this era, you're only going to get him for 1 year. So let's put him in the best position to succeed and our team in the best position to succeed as well. So stock up on them. If you want me to go stock down on a few teams, I'll say, like, I'm just curious about some other ones. There's some teams that I'm not as excited about as others. I won't bore people with some teams that maybe you don't care as much about, but Texas A&M was in the top 15. I don't know if I believe that. Texas was in the top 20. I don't know if I believe that. But like I said, I think, this sport, they're all, you're always hoping to have interesting storylines that capture the average fan. And I think this year we got a bunch of them for sure.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. The UConn, listen, that's UConn, I guess. I mean, what can you say? This Dan Hurley, he always finds a way. I mean, you can't never really go against him because he's unpredictable, but he always finds a way, which is what scares a lot of people, I guess you could say, when it comes to him. So, it would not surprise me if UConn really.
Who are you stock up and stock down on, as far as like outside of Carolina? Like, who's the team that you're most excited to watch or see what they're about?
I'm gonna be honest with you. As bad as I hate to say this, stock up.
Well, you don't have to say stock up. Just who are you most interested to see?
So I'm interested in seeing Baylor. I'm curious to see what they're gonna do this year with O'Meara and Roach on the team with VJ Edgecombe. I'm interested in UConn. I really am. I really want to. I tell you, Louisville, Kentucky, and Arkansas.
Sure.
I'm really intrigued on seeing what they do this year, only because of the fact coach changes, team rebuild. and I want to see how that lays out.
Of course.
And let's see how we know what Coach Cal is going to do as far as putting a team together. This is the first time Mark Pope has really been in a big situation such as Kentucky coming from BYU. So that's going to be interesting because he put a brand new team together. And then Coach, Pat Kelsey at Louisville, who I think is a really, really good coach. And that's going to be interesting to see the bounce back, what Louisville does because of just what Louisville has done the past few seasons in the ACC. So I'm intrigued with those three for sure. I'm intrigued with Duke.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say with Louisville. No, I'm intrigued by Duke too, obviously. I was going to say with Louisville, like, I do think that to me, I think it's important for the ACC that Louisville's good. Listen, we know the conference is kind of on the brink, and listen, we know that's football related, but I bring it up because from a basketball perspective, it's Carolina, it's Duke, and then it's sort of been a drop off. Now I think Wake's going to be good this year, but I think for the health of the conference, as long as it is together, I think Louisville's got to be that power player. And you look at this league is that think about all the teams that have historically been good that haven't lived up to their end of the bargain outside of Duke and Carolina the last few years. Obviously Louisville, I just mentioned. Syracuse is another one. So, I actually tweeted it out and got some pushback from some people that coach in the ACC. They weren't very happy with it, but I said, you get past Duke and Carolina, it's kind of a lot of, and I do think it's kind of important for the conference for Louisville to look good.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Like you said, if you can get Louisville into the mix of things and into the flow of things, like you said, I think Wake Forest is going to be really good this year. I think Clemson is still right there. I didn't have them on my list, but I wouldn't sleep on Miami either. Just because of some things and some pieces that they've brought in as well. And a couple, Nigel Pack coming back, Matthew Cleveland. So it's going to be interesting to see also what they do. But I agree with you. I mean, the ACC, in order for it to be good, Louisville has to be good. And but not just Louisville. I think Wake Forest also has to be good. They've always been right there on the fence to me. Wake Forest has. So I think this might be that year where they actually get over the fence a little bit this year. So let's hope, I guess you could say. So, but
I think Steve Forbes. Yeah, I was gonna say I should wrap by saying I think Steve Forbes is a really good coach, but at some point you got to get over the hump. I think it's either the last 2 years or two of the last three they've been right on the bubble till the end and can't quite get over the hump. So,
yeah, absolutely. So I want to know what your stock down teams are.
From the ACC or in general?
In general.
So stock down. So one team that was in the top 20 that I frankly just don't get is Creighton. I'm a Big East guy. I watch them a lot. I just think what Baylor Shireman and Trey Alexander did. Baylor Shireman was a first-round pick. Trey Alexander's on an NBA roster as of right now. I don't know if things have changed or will change before opening night, but those were two pros, and I like Kalkbrenner. I think he's really good, but I don't love a lot of the pieces that they have around him this year. Pop Isaacs, was kind of up and down in his 2 years at Texas Tech. I said this on my show, so I'll just say it here. I'm not trying to belittle or besmirch a 20, 21-year-old kid. But he had some pretty serious issues at Texas Tech. And that are Googleable. It's not I'm not trying to, speak out about whatever, but you can Google what he may or may not have, what he was certainly accused of doing. And I know that in that locker room and in that athletic department, there was some concern about bringing him in. But he's your starting point guard now. And by the way, here's the other thing. Take out that other stuff. He's coming off hip surgery, which is like a huge thing that I don't think people are talking about. So, the Big East, I will say, I think that after you get past UConn, I think St. John's is pretty good. Xavier's pretty good. Marquette should be good again. But there is some wiggle room once you get past UConn and whoever you deem to be the best. So I would say stock down a little bit on Creighton. I would say stock down. I mentioned Texas A&M. Last year started in the top 25. I think after out of conference play, they were 9-4, which, as you know, 9-4 for a power conference team is kind of okay. Like, who did you really beat?
Right.
The year before, by the way, they were right on the fringe of the top 25. We're 8-5 going into SEC play. Now, they've been good once they get to SEC play, but it's like, well, conference play is 40%, or out of conference play, is 40% of the season. They haven't been good the last 2 years. They bring back the exact same team. So, at some point, like, I need to see something here. And I'll tell you, like, I go on radio every week in College Station, and I don't think I think there's probably more excitement on a national level than there is on a local level. I think they kind of feel the same way. Is like the fans are like, I need to see it, whatever. Tennessee's another one. Tennessee lost a lot too. Like, first of all, Dalton Knecht had 37 straight points or whatever for the Lakers the other night in preseason. Yeah. But Jonas Adu's gone. You mentioned a couple of the other transfer, or I don't know why I said you mentioned the other transfers. You said Norchad O'Meara and Jeremy Roach, but they had a couple other guys decide to leave the program, and so Zakai Ziegler's awesome, but he's not a guy that can put the program on his back. Now, Rick Barnes did a good job in the portal. Don't want to diminish that, but it's like the SEC is really good, and there's a lot of really good teams, and I think Tennessee's probably closer to 6-7 in that range than they are to 1 or 2 or 3. So Creighton, Texas A&M, Tennessee are a couple that immediately come to mind that I would say I'm stocked down on a little bit for sure.
Yeah. I do want to ask you this. What do you think about Arizona this year? Would you say that it's up or down?
So it's really funny. It was probably about 2 weeks ago. I did an interview with Michael Luke, who hosts the Best Arizona podcast going, and we talked a lot about it. He said, what is your expectation? And there's a couple things. One, which is certainly Carolina related, which is why I'm sure you're asking about it. But, what's been interesting about Arizona, I told Michael this, is they've been kind of counter to what you would expect from this perspective. Is they've played in the Pac-12, which has not been a good conference in the previous couple years. And they've scheduled really tough out of conference. And so you get a 1 seed, a 2 seed. And what you would think when you hear that is, well, they probably, weren't very good out of conference, but in conference, they probably went 17-2 or, 17-3 or whatever. And it's kind of been the exact opposite. They've been really good out of conference. Won at Duke last year, won the Maui Invitational the year before, but they haven't been good in league. I don't want to say they haven't been good because they won the Pac-12 last year, but they've been inconsistent. Last year, they lost at Oregon State. They lost at Stanford. They took some really weird losses. Well, the Big 12, you don't show up to play in league play, you're going to get your butt beat. And so to me, I need to see it. Like on paper, I know they were right on the fringes of the top. I think they were in the top 10, maybe number 10 in that first AP poll. And I think that's probably on paper where they should be. But again, if you just don't show up for games in the Big 12, which has unfortunately been their MO since Tommy Lloyd got the job, you can lose to virtually anybody in that league on any given night. I think I have 8 or 7 teams from that league in my top 25. I think there were 7 or 8 as I'm having a lighting issue here. I think there's 7 or 8 in the league that were in the preseason AP top 25. So I think that's the big thing. And then the second thing, which any Carolina fan can relate to, is, the Caleb Love factor. And I'll say, I really thought last year, that frankly, for about the first probably 4 or 5 weeks, he was really bought in and doing all the right things and saying all the right things. And he was a big part of why they beat Duke. I also think as the season wore on, it became more of the Caleb Love show. And I think his force of nature kind of, I don't want to say it took over the program. I don't think he did anything intentionally or, intentionally negative, but it became less about the team and more about him. And I think that's kind of part of why they struggled. We all watched the Sweet 16 game, which unfortunately Carolina was in the building the same night. They both took losses, but that Sweet 16 game, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but what was it? 2 for 20, 1 for 17 from the field, something like that. I can't remember the exact numbers, but his force of personality kind of started to take over that team late. And I think when you have a team with Jaden Bradley, with KJ Lewis, with Krevis, I mean, that's a top 10 roster on paper. You can't let Caleb Love, become an 18, 19, 20 shot per game night, per night kind of guy. As long as you don't,
Right.
you'll be fine. But unfortunately, that's how it kind of skewed by the end of last year.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I just have a feeling that Caleb is going to be a different Caleb this year. I think he, for some reason, I sense some sort of maturity from him. I don't know why. I mean, it could be just me. I mean, he cut the hair, doesn't have the dread, the locks or anything anymore. Now he has the little brush cut. Like for some reason, I don't know why, but I sense a little bit more maturity from him this year. And I mean, I think that's going to really play well on the court. Listen, Caleb might still be Caleb, but
he's going to have his moments. By the way, keep talking. My computer's unplugged here. I'm about to just plug it in really quick. Give me half a second.
I got you. Yeah. So I just think that, they have a really good team. Like they really do have a good team with Bradley and Creasa and am I wrong? Townsend? Townsend is on there, right?
Yeah, Trey Townsend transferred in from Oakland.
He
wasn't really the Kentucky killer, although his team killed Kentucky last year. His team ended the Calipari era. He really didn't have that much to do with it, but yes, Trey Townsend is there this year. So
yeah,
he's a good player.
I mean, I it's going to be interesting because I'm curious to see what they actually going to end up doing against Duke this year in Arizona, not in Cameron. How
about this for a two game stretch for Duke? Because I'll be at the second one. They play at Arizona on a Friday, and then they play Kansas on a neutral in Vegas on a Tuesday. The second one I'll be at. It's right before Thanksgiving, and so be interesting to say the least.
Yeah. I got to ask you some questions about Duke, but I'm gonna jump to some other things real quick first because I really want to know about some things with Duke and see what you think about it. But your most underrated or dark horses this year, like who are those teams that you could really see really pushing teams to the limit and really possibly going pretty far this year?
So this first one's a cop-out because they're in the top 15. But I think there is this notion in college basketball that Calipari is completely past his prime and he's terrible and he's the worst thing that's ever happened. He's just got a bunch of good players again and they're going to stink. Well, let's not forget. They finished second last year in what was the toughest SEC in the history of the league. They won at Tennessee the final week of the regular season. Tennessee, of course, made the Elite Eight. They destroyed Alabama in late February going into March. Alabama made the Final Four. They destroyed Auburn at Auburn. Auburn ended up winning the SEC tournament championship. So, listen, I think it was time for him to leave. He said it himself. This program needs a new voice. I think Mark Pope is going to be great there. But I think Calipari has a chip on his shoulder this year. And I think he's got the right roster. Now, when he left, he did the thing where he said, I understand this is an older man's sport now, and I can't recruit 7 freshmen, We'll see what 2025 looks like because I know some people at Arkansas, and I think he might revert back to his old ways. But for 2025, he's got a veteran team. I was thinking about this. This might be the first year really since Cal got to Kentucky. Take out the year after COVID when you couldn't recruit high school, basically. You couldn't go on the road. That was the year they had Oscar Sheboy, et cetera. Take out that year. This is the first year he's not going to be relying on freshmen. He's going to be relying on John L. Davis, 4th year college player, whatever he is. Jonas Adu, 3rd, 4th year college player. DJ Wagner was in the system with him last year. Adu Thiero was with him last year. And whatever you get from Boogie Fland, he doesn't have to carry the program. And so, I'm known as like a Calipari apologist, but I also just feel like I just spit facts. And it's like, I think because he didn't have success in the tournament, and I understand it's Kentucky basketball. It's no different than Alabama football. It's not about, I always say this about Ryan Day in football. It's not about does Ohio State beat Rutgers or Indiana? It's about, do you
Right.
beat Michigan? Do you win the Big Ten? Do you compete for national championships? So I understand at Kentucky, that's the same standard. You compete for national championships. He's had 2 bad tournament losses in the last 3 years. I would also say those two tournament losses, he had a 2 seed, he had a 3 seed. And I think the pressure is kind of off of him as far as knowing, like I and you know this, you love college basketball like I do.
Yep.
I think that fan base, he kind of internally, whether he would admit it or not, knew that they were expecting the worst, especially last year with Oakland. So I think he gets a fresh start. So they're one that I think, I think people think, oh, they'll be 22-10, be a 4 seed and lose in the first round. They have a roster good enough to make a Final Four. And I think with the pressure off, they will be at minimum a second weekend team. Some other teams that I like, one, let's kind of stay on the Arkansas theme. Eric Musselman goes to USC. I don't know what they were picked in the Big Ten, but I know they were nowhere near the top 25 in the first AP poll. I have them as right around a top 25 team. I saw him practice a little bit this summer. Long way to go, but Desmond Claude was an all Big East kind of guy at Xavier last year. St. Thomas, people are saying, is an NBA, a draft type guy. I like some of their freshmen. I like Harrison Hornery, who stayed from the previous, that Andy Enfield team from a year ago. Yep. I like the team that he has there. And, listen, I think we'll see about the wear and tear in the Big Ten. But I think he's going to be really good. And then another one that we mentioned, and I think this one's becoming a little bit trendy, but another team that wasn't in the top 25 of the AP poll was Wake Forest. And we know how good Hunter Salas is. Forbes, for however he does it, he always finds that stretch 4, whether it was Jake LaRavia, whether it was Andrew Carr last year, he's going to find that guy. And like I said with him, this is kind of the year where it's like, we're all believers in who he is and what he's capable of. But now it's, you can't be on the bubble again this year. Like, you got to finish 2nd or 3rd in this league. You got to get to 24 and 8 or whatever. You got to be a 7 seed and leave no doubt. So we'll see if that actually happens. But I think I think they're the one in the ACC that I probably like to surprise some people.
Yeah. Like, once again, Wake Forest is very dangerous team, man, with Efton Reed and Hunter Salas, of course, coming back. Lost a few big pieces. They lost, losing Boobie Miller, going to SMU, lost Andrew Carr, who's now at Kentucky, who I've heard has been doing pretty well, leading scorer in the blue and white game here not too long ago, a couple days ago or whatever. But he's got some good pieces coming in to hopefully fill those roles. And I'm like you, we all do believe in Forbes, but now it's okay. You got to prove it to everybody now. And
really quick, I was going to say, you go back to last year, I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but the famous court storming game, I mean, they were in the tournament. Like, they weren't even on the bubble after they beat Duke. And then they take something like 3 bad losses in 4 games or 2 bad losses in the final 3, whatever it was. And it's like, all of a sudden, boom, you're right back there. So they got to do their work early, leave no doubt. I think they will, because like you said, they got a really talented roster. So
yeah. Absolutely. I'm with you as far as, underrated or dark horses. I think Arkansas, I mean, you can't never count Cal out. And like you said, this year, he really does have a lot more veteran players instead of relying on freshmen. Because that's what Cal does. He relies on freshmen for sure. He's been doing that for eons, basically.
Years, yeah.
So, the fact that, like you said, Jonas Adu, John L. Davis, DJ Wagner, you got Zvonimir
Ivisic? Come on, man.
Yeah,
now he's got his twin brother is at Illinois. You got to get to know 2 Ivisics, because there's another Ivisic at Illinois.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Who I've completely forgot about. I think that they may be an underrated team or dark horse team.
Illinois.
Yeah, Illinois is going to be. Yeah,
I was surprised that they were not in the top 25 to start the preseason, and they're certainly talented. That's a good one. That's a good one. I think Trey White, who was at Louisville last year, that Louisville situation was so chaotic, but Trey White 2 years ago at USC was really good as a freshman. I think he probably, pursued Louisville for maybe some financial reasons. I don't know that. I'm not trying to put him down. And if he did, go get your money. I have no problem. But that was a chaotic situation. I think we're going to see the best version of him. We'll see if Kylan Boswell, what becomes of it. But Illinois has got a pretty good team. So Illinois is going to be one that we should probably acknowledge. So,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm right there with you. Like, a lot of people are not talking about Illinois like that. And I think it's because of the fact I think they're trying to compare this year's Illinois team to last year's Illinois team.
No doubt.
And
totally different.
Totally different teams. But the fact is, Brad Underwood still has a really good team that could be an actual dark horse for sure. Along with Kansas State, they another one. It's going to be interesting to see, how Jerome Tang is going to work because that front court is loaded. I mean, he's got 4, 5 guys with Coleman and Onyenzo and
Okoro, who was played at Sanford last year.
Yeah. So I mean, he's got a lot to deal with.
Yeah, it's funny, because when you talk about overrated, underrated, it's funny because the AP top 10 was identical to the top 10 in my final, kind of way too early poll that I did over the summer. But after that, there's a ton of teams that were differing. So it was kind of weird how there seemed to be, I don't know if all the AP voters just decided to follow my top 10 and just roll with that, or no, I'm totally kidding. But Kansas State's a good example. Kansas State, Illinois, 2 teams that you just brought up, Lenzel, that I agree with, that I had them in my top 25. The AP didn't. I like USC. The AP doesn't. Wake Forest, the AP doesn't. So actually, to the credit of the AP, I didn't have Wake in my final top 25, although I probably should have. But yeah, I will say, I think I don't want to say the top 10 is like set in stone, no doubt about it. But it does feel like there's some really big disparity on opinions with certain teams. And I think some of the ones that we've mentioned, including Kansas State and them, probably good examples of teams that there's a big difference in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but we'll see. Of course, as they always say, you know what they say, Aaron, that the preseason polls and stuff don't mean anything. They always say that, right? Like, that's,
of course,
but
they do.
Then if that's the case, then why even do it then, right?
Well, and that's the big argument is, and I have always said that about preseason polls is, it's not that I don't take them seriously, but I've been doing this for 15 years. I still don't know what an AP poll, what a preseason poll is. Is it who's the best today? Who's going to be the best at the end of the year? Who has the most upside? I don't know what it is. So, if it's today, then that's a lot different than what it could. So whatever. But to your point, there's going to be change. There always is. And of course, if you like where your team's ranked, then the polls matter. If you don't like where it's ranked, then they don't matter, and polls are stupid and all that stuff. And the good news is that, whether it's football or basketball, we get to settle it on the court and on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this, moving to the next topic right quick. How do you feel about, because I have this talk with so many people, alumni players, writers, other podcasters, you name it. How do you feel about the transfer portal and the NIL?
So I'm the perfect person to ask this, and I'm not being sarcastic. I was at an NIL panel on Friday where Woj was the keynote speaker. So it was all the power players in NIL. And, what I would say is a couple things. From the portal and NIL, to me, are 2 completely separate things, but they do go together.
Right.
The portal, okay, my thoughts on the portal are pretty straightforward. It's great for our business because April and May are now 2 of my busiest months. Like, I actually think the interest in college basketball, it's almost like the NBA. Like, the free agency in the NBA has in some ways certainly overtaken the regular season, let alone in some ways the playoffs. And I will say, April in college basketball is insane and fans love it and fans are into it and all of that. I don't think, and I mean this sincerely, I don't think it's necessarily what's best for the players, and it's for all the reasons that, listen, if you're not happy, if you're not playing, I understand you only got 4 years of eligibility, but you go 2, 3, 4 places. At a certain point, you just got to stay and compete. And like, I'm not going to do the whole cliche thing, but
Right.
the other thing, and Woj did say this at this panel. He said, "Look, we're all in favor of getting players paid." He's like, "It's literally my job now to make sure that players get paid." He said, "But let's not forget about that degree." And I've said that kind of stuff on social media, and you get pushed back. You don't care about the players, Torres. What these poor kids, you're making money off them, and now you don't. It's like, no, that's not what I said at all. But here's the bottom line, and here's the truth: is anybody who's transferred to high school, a college, that transfers don't always, credits don't always transfer, and that's just we've somehow forgotten the school element, that these are still academic institutions. And the bottom line is, we're back to, after this year, having 4 years of eligibility. You're not going to get that 5th year for COVID. And so you go to 3 schools in 4 years chasing, and it's not even chasing the bag. I think most kids just want to play, but you go to 3 schools in 4 years, all of a sudden you're out of eligibility. You don't have that degree. And it's like, and it's cliche, but it's the truth, is the number of people that will make a living for the rest of their lives off of basketball is few and far between. And so, I just think, the way Woj said it on Friday, which, it wasn't broadcast or anything, so I'm just paraphrasing what he said, but I thought he was right, is, everybody in this room accepts and understands that it's great that kids are getting paid, but let's not forget about the academic component to it and the fact that these kids are still student athletes. So I do think that's kind of lost in the shuffle. And then the last thing I would say about NIL, being in that room with so many smart people, I think we're moving forward in this thing, is that I think at first nobody knew what they were doing. And then there was a couple schools that were way ahead on collectives, and then everybody else is playing catch up. And now I think it's about, how do we build sustainable models? How are we not pressuring the same 5 boosters for a check every single year? And how do we find that balance, right? And this was something Nick Saban said a lot during the process of, it's okay to, like, I don't remember exactly how Saban said it, but something to the effect of, there's a lot of taking on the player. Like right now, the players have all the control. Okay. You give them money, you give them a scholarship, you give them this, you give them that. Well, at some point, what are they giving back? And it's production, it's this, it's that. And I think we're getting to the place where, respectfully of the players, there's going to be a little bit more balance, whether it's, I don't know if it'd be necessarily like performance bonuses, but is it opt-out clauses where, if you're not performing, listen, it's a two-way street. You want to get paid. You got to deliver. And I think, I know I'm going long here, but what I would say is, I think that's where a lot of schools are, I think that's the next step, is that right now everything's guaranteed. You get paid. You don't have to perform. I was speaking to a collective person the other day. He's like, we got a guy on our, it's a smaller school. It's not a school that can, just cut a check to everybody for whatever amount. It's, part of our roster's getting paid. Part of them are just happy to have a scholarship. Part of them are using us to get to a higher level, whatever. But he said, he's like, we got a kid that isn't performing. He's not playing well. He's a pain in the butt to deal with. And he's like, it pains me to write a check to that kid every week when you got other guys on the team that are more deserving and are showing up with the right attitudes every day. He's like, but we got to get to the end of football season. And then frankly, we're going to have a tough conversation with him. So that was a very long answer, but I think NIL is a little bit more nuanced than maybe the average fan thinks. But I also think we're getting to, we keep saying it's a professional model. And I think we're getting to that balance where for a year or two, it's been the players have 100% of the leverage, 0%, it's all upside, 0 downside for them. And I think we're getting back to kind of that middle ground where, okay, we're going to pay you, but you're a professional now. You got to perform. You got to actually take care of certain things. And I think we're kind of getting to that middle ground.
Yeah. So you would think like a collective bargaining to come into play?
The one thing I will say, being in that room, this house settlement where basically schools can pay players straight up. I think that's the house settlement itself, I think, is a little bit further from actually happening than people realize. Or further along than it's further from happening than I think has been publicly perceived. I'm not a lawyer. I don't really understand why, but I think the people in that room this week kind of made it feel like there's a couple steps before we actually get to just, hey, Lenzel plays basketball at UNC. We cut him a check like he's an employee. Yeah, I guess that's probably the best way to put it. I think we're a little further away from just student athletes being employees than maybe I think a lot of people think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had so many thoughts as far as things that could possibly happen. Like the whole collective bargaining situation, possible salary caps. But then if you put salary caps on these teams, then it's still going to favor the North Carolinas, the Kansas, the Dukes, the Kentuckys, the Arkansas, more so than it's going to favor, a Loyola Chicago or Florida Gulf Coast, or because of the fact they're not that top tier type school, that those top tier schools got the money.
And the other thing too, which I don't think people have considered, is even if the school's paying them, the school can't restrict true NIL. So if there's a booster that wants to pay a kid $100,000 to show up at the car dealership once a month, like, you can't restrict that. That's, again, I'm not a labor lawyer, but that is true NIL. And so, that's one thing that you ask any of the experts, like, collectives aren't going away. They might not have as big of a role, be as important. But again, we know what schools have money, whether it's football, basketball, whatever. And just because, hey, there's a salary cap on how much the school can pay you, doesn't mean that, again, if Texas thinks that there's a quarterback that's worth $1 million, if the school can pay him $500,000, but, Texas thinks, hey, it's going to take us $5 million to get, I don't know if you can limit that. So that's another thing that I think is probably, maybe a little bit misleading, is just the idea that, like I said, that this idea that, once schools can pay players directly, that it completely eliminates what is considered, quote unquote, true name, image, likeness, a player's opportunity to actually endorse things.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I guess this kind of goes into my next question, actually. Like, do you think that, number one, the NCAA is behind when it comes to regulating and making, rules and things like that for the transfer portal and NIL? And do you think that that is ruining college basketball to where it is now, to where it, or from what it used to be to where it's actually headed?
Well, the NCAA component of it, and it's funny because I have talked to people from the NCAA about it. They just put in the rules that the schools want, and I'm going to get killed because this is a Carolina podcast, but I think the number one offender of talking out of both sides of your mouth is actually Mac Brown. I mean, I'll just say it. And, if you get hate in the comment section, I'm sorry, but listen, Mac Brown, for years, they're going to recruit out of the handshake line, and this is wrong, and this is this, and this is that. So what does the NCAA do? They put in a one-time transfer rule. What ends up happening? Tez Johnson isn't eligible. Mac Brown throws a fit. Now, Carolina fans know it was a little bit different because they changed the rule after Tez Johnson got to campus, but it's like, you either want these rules or you don't. And so the NCAA, they knew they were getting sued, and they were like, we got to throw up our hands. So the rule that you guys wanted is no longer in place. So I'm not absolving the NCAA. And I think the NCAA's guilt in this is more that they weren't ahead of it, that it was coming. It was where fans wanted it to go. And, we got until 2021 to put a plan in place, and they decided after the rules and the laws changed to say, okay, now we got to put a plan in place. It's like anything else in life, is that, if you want to buy a house, you don't show, that's probably a bad analogy, but whatever it is, if you want to start a podcast, you don't click play. You figure out, okay, what's the show going to be about? Who's going to be my guests? How do I do the graphics? Like, And the NCAA just kind of showed up and said, we're going to do a podcast, so I don't know. So the point I'm trying to make is that some of it is unfairly on the NCAA, but where they're guilty is they could have gotten ahead of it 4 or 5 years ago and we wouldn't be in this situation. They didn't, and now we are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I tell you, because and I'll just say this real quick. I'm a Knicks fan, right? In the NBA, of course. I hate the NBA. I at the moment,
I'm with
like
you, man.
I really do. I hate the NBA. I hate the NBA because nowadays it's just entertainment. It's college. The kids I'm not even gonna call them kids, but the young men and young women that play college, they're playing for something.
I agree.
They're playing for conference tournaments. They're playing for individual awards. They're playing for regular season champions and the national championship and the MVP or national player of the year. Like, they're playing for so many different things. Whereas in the NBA, you got a bunch of egos. All of these guys making all of this money. They're having this low management. They're sitting on the bench, making this money, and really don't care about the game. They look like they're just uninterested in the game. Whereas the others, they're just entertaining the fans out there. So I don't want college basketball to get to that. And if the NCAA don't get a hold on things, I think that is where college basketball is heading. And I don't want that to happen because I love it so much. Like, I don't want to stop looking at it.
Well, it's funny. The one thing I will say, it is funny how NIL and the portal only is ruining college sports when your team's losing. Like, I'm hearing that a lot from Alabama fans right now. Oh, NIL's ruining the college football. It's like, yeah, it's because your team stinks for the first time in forever. But no, I agree with you. And I do hope that once we get further along, because listen, that was why Tony Bennett retired, right? He said it in his press conference. He said, college sports is not in a good place. Now, I think some of the things he said I would disagree with to a degree, but what he said, we need to figure out a salary cap, a salary floor, and I'm paraphrasing, but a salary cap, a salary floor. And the one thing I think everybody agrees with, and if you don't, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. There shouldn't be it shouldn't be unlimited transfers. And it's funny, right? Because again, 3, 4, 5 years ago, when it was clear that the one-time transfer was coming in, if somebody like me said something, oh, you just don't want to give the kids any power. It's like, no, there's no sport on planet Earth except for college football and college basketball, and obviously the others as well, college sports, that every single player on your roster is a free agent every single year.
Right.
And so I think we'll get there. I think we're on our way. But to your point, I do think that if players are just leaving for more money, if every year, even as a Carolina fan, if you can't enjoy and get to know these players and whatever, you're just going to tune out. And so I'm with you, as I hope we don't get there.
Yeah, I just, it's crazy because that kind of flows into, like, when people say, like, here at UNC, UNC doesn't pay to play, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people seem to think, and it's really been the big talk throughout this whole offseason, that UNC is broke. They don't have no money to pay players or whatever. And I don't understand where that comes from. Like, how can you?
I'd love to see what car RJ Davis is driving right now. I bet he's not riding his bike around campus. But that's true NIL, though,
Right.
But
and not only that, but he earned that. He earns a lot of his NIL. Like, he didn't just come out the bat and say,
that's what I mean.
I want $2 million or whatever, and they just gave it to him. No, he might have started out with $750,000, but then his other sponsors and endorsements that he got or whatever adds up to $2 million. Like, you have to work for something instead of just getting handouts. Like, that's my thing.
And part of that too is everybody has an agent now. That's partly your agent's job. That was kind of my issue with some of the UNLV stuff from a few weeks ago, is that, listen, if the school promised them something and they didn't deliver, that's one thing. But also, bro, you're the QB of a top 25 team in Las Vegas. There's so much commerce in that city. Part of it is on your agent. Pick up the phone and get some deals done. So anyway.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah.
it's
So,
still a great sport. I don't want to be the guy that sounds like I'm complaining, because I'm not. I'm just saying is that there's so many variables that don't actually ever get talked about on a large scale that probably need to be considered a little bit more closely.
yeah, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. I've been saying this stuff for the longest or whatever, and I mean, I'm hoping that my message is getting out there a little bit more to the people for them to hear this type of stuff, because
No
I've
doubt.
been saying a lot of this stuff for the longest, man, and I because I love the game so much, and I just don't want to see it get to that NBA level. Like
I agree.
I just don't, because if it gets to that, it's not going to be good. It is not going to
No.
be good. I don't think so. So,
I
but
say that as somebody I
you know,
don't watch a ton of NBA, especially in the regular season, so I totally get it.
exactly. So, all right, Aaron, I got to ask you
Sure.
expectations on the Heels for this year. Stock up, stock down. Give it to me, and don't worry, Tar Heel fans.
Yeah,
This is my guy, so be cool.
Stock up,
with him.
stock up. But listen, my concern is the same as every Carolina fan. It's not a unique take. Is, do you have that 5-man that you can count on? Now, the good news is in college basketball that position is, probably a little bit less important than it has been. And, how many teams is Carolina going to play that have a dominant 5? Like, I don't have the schedule in front of me, but it's a handful over the course of the year. But we talked about Kentucky. We talked about Alabama football. We talked about Ohio State football. I know what the expectations are at Carolina, and it's to compete at the highest level. Now, the good news is the backcourt, the wings, that's as good as anybody. I mean, we just talked about RJ Davis, but, we've all seen the reports on Drake Powell. I'm a big Cade Tyson guy. I think he's just going to be lights out. I mean, shot 47% or whatever last year at the mid-major level. So I like this team a lot. And again, now part of it is that basically in those biggest games, the biggest moments against the most talented teams, do you feel like you're going to be at a disadvantage? By the way, I'll say this too. I liked the flashes that I saw from Jalen Washington last year. It's just, can he do it consistently if he's called upon to do it? So that's the big question. I know it's a Carolina pod. I really do like the team. It's just my question about them is the same question that everybody has.
Right, about the big man in the paint in the front court. And listen, rightfully, you of course everybody feels that way. Like you said, that is everybody's thing as far as what's on their mind for the Tar Heels this year. Not having Baycott down there in the middle. I must say, Jalen Washington had a very good game against Memphis for the exhibition. Now, of course, it doesn't count, but 17 minutes. 17 points. I think he had like 8 rebounds, like 3 blocks, and something like that, all in like 25 minutes, which is very, very good. Like, if you, when looking at those stats. Now, granted, Tyson didn't really have a good game. Jackson, Powell didn't really have a good game. RJ didn't play. Ty Claude didn't play, and yet Carolina still beat Memphis in Memphis by 8 or so, or something like that, which to me is another dark horse team this year. By looking at them, I think that they're going to be very good. Really, really good game. But of course, it didn't count. Exhibition game, things like that. Carolina's going to be. My concerns are, of course, just like everybody else's and Tar Heel fans. No big dominant presence in the middle. But I think that opens up the door, because I think Hubert has a lot more flexibility this year, to where you're going to see a lot more transition, a lot more running, which is, I think they're going to get back to that Roy Williams type style play, where you just run up the court or whatever. So I think they have like the 3-second rule. The ball has to get up the court in like 3 seconds. Like that's pretty fast. Fast.
No,
so
I'm excited. They're amongst, they're right up there with just about anybody as far as who I'm excited about. And it's for, I think, obviously all the new pieces. By the way, is it the first week that they play Kansas, November 8th. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to learn very, very, very quickly here. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm surprised you're not going to that game, Aaron.
I will tell you really quick, and then I got to run. I did my first trip to Fog Allen Fieldhouse last year for the UConn Kansas game. It was as good as advertised. I never tell anybody how to spend their money. I know everybody's working hard, especially, I'm not going to get political, but in this economy, I know everybody's dollars spread a little thin. I don't want to go there, but if you can and you have the chance, I know we're like 3 weeks away now, but it really is as good as advertised. It was an awesome experience. And by the way, I know there's probably going to be Carolina fans listening to this that are going to be at Fog Allen. Enjoy the trip. If you've been, if you've never been, it is so freaking cool and you're going to have a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Aaron, I appreciate you. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be there, but
next time
I do know some fans that are going or whatever. And I do plan on, cause they're doing the home and home. So I'll try and make the one when Kansas comes to Chapel Hill next season or whatever. So listen, I appreciate you stopping by for sure. Please let everybody know where they can find you at.
Yeah, no, on Twitter, you can find me at Aaron_Torres. Aaron Torres Pod is the Instagram handle, and the Aaron Torres Podcast, like I said, 3 times a week, sometimes more depending on the week. We're talking college sports all the time. You know, obviously, like I said, a lot of football, but obviously with basketball, man, it's coming quick. And I cannot wait for the start of the season. By the way, I cannot wait for that Friday night Carolina-Kansas game here in just a couple weeks.
Yeah, that's gonna be crazy. So, we'll talk about that behind the scenes or whatever.
When that game happens, I know where I'm gonna be watching my post game. I can tell you that much.
Where's that?
94 feet of Carolina pod, obviously 94 feet of UNC pod, I should say.
My God, that's what's up. My God.
You'll be going live, right? Doesn't matter what time that game ends. You'll be going live.
Absolutely. I'll be there. I will definitely be there. My God, I appreciate you. Listen, everybody, that's Aaron Torres right there. Guy right there. Absolutely. Listen, Aaron, I appreciate you stopping by, man, for sure. It's always an honor. You're always welcome back. Like I tell everybody, it's an open invitation. Salute to you. I support everything that you got going on. Much success to you. You know, keep doing what you do for guys like me, paving the way for guys like me and other people that want to get into this space as well. So, absolutely much love to you, man. And like I said, nothing but support and success to you.
Well, thank you for having me, man. Are we still live, or I don't know if we're still live or not?
Yeah, we still live. I'm about to close it out right now. I actually got somebody at the door coming in, so of course I'm a definitely go ahead and answer that. And listen, everybody, I appreciate everybody for watching. I know this was a quick show, but I had to get Aaron on the show for sure. But we're gonna make sure we do this again. And until the next time, peace.